Hi, everyone. This is Mac from Fayday, a business brokerage firm. Thank you for watching this video, and if you like what we are presenting, please subscribe to this channel itself. So today itself, we have Anne Lehman, who is presently selling her service as a consultant with NCS, and she has 12 years things of startup experience where she built businesses in the corporate housing space, followed by the biotech space. So Anne, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me today.
Great.
Very pleased, very impressed.
Great. Okay. So why not you do a quick introduction about your experience and about anything, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit long, so I'll try to focus mainly on the entrepreneurial aspects. Though my background, you probably hear that I'm French, and I arrived in Singapore in 2006 with a sales background, essentially in tech. Companies like my last employers was Microsoft, prior it was Oracle. And basically when I arrived in Singapore, we discovered that it was pretty difficult, nearly impossible to find a short-term accommodation. When I say short-term, is a few months accommodation for a family. And this is when I said, but why don't we simply create it? There is obviously a need. A lot of people are looking for this, and there is no such services. This is how I started my first entrepreneurship experience, let's say, in Singapore. And 10 years down the road, basically, life happened. I decided to move on for personal reasons, and I started another venture, a biotech venture, as I was invited by a French corporate venture building to start this new company for them around patent that they had bought from NUS University. And well, that is itself another story. After, I would say, another 18 months, that second experience was not so successful, I must say. We can go back to it later on the learnings. I went back into the corporate world for BlueSG, another startup that I was helping to grow in the innovation. And since then, all my activities have been into starting new entities for large corporations, mainly BlueSG, which belonged to Bolloré, then NCS for Apollo Tires. And now I decided to basically sell that ability to kickstart new business, grow businesses for many clients. Today I'm working, my main client is NCS.
Nice. Thank you for sharing your very rich experience. Part of the reason why I decided to invite Anne today is because she has a very rich experience coming from the tech sector, which I think is great. At the same time, she has started her own business in the corporate housing space and successfully exit from it, followed by in the biotech thing, which is something that is so different, right? Is it easy for you to pick up? Well,
it's not easy to pick up. It's true that the domain is very, very technical. And typically the reason why the company or the venture builder hired me is because all their team members were scientists themselves. So the inventors were professors from SUTD and NUS. They were themselves surrounded by a lot of PhD. They had engineers who had developed many things. So they had lots of great deal of scientific experience. What they were lacking was the operational ability to kickstart a business, as well as the sales part and fundraising. So somebody who will have, this business grit somehow. So they say, we don't need, the science is covered. We have already 8 people on science, but what we don't have is the business and operation side. And you're good at that. So that's why I entered and I was selected to run that.
So yeah, the missing piece to the whole thing.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Similarly, that was the same approach with Apollo Tire. They hired me to have this ability to look at the business side of it, of things, to develop new businesses, new opportunities.
Great. So I'm really curious here, right? when you came to Singapore, you faced an issue in getting accommodation for yourself. So you decide to use your problem as a basis to start a business around it.
Yes.
So in your opinion itself, based on your observation in so many years of entrepreneurial experience, like how many % of the time do entrepreneurs use their problem to use it as a foundational basis for the business? Just a gauge.
I don't have the exact numbers, but when you look at it, the way a successful business is a business that solves a problem.
Great, okay.
And not the other way around, where you come up with design something and then you wonder, what can I do with this? That is usually a failure. But when the business is actually solving a problem, very often the people who are building it actually experience themselves the suffering of it is really troublesome. Think of Property Guru founders, who I know as well, because they were from INSEAD as well. And they said, well, true enough, when we arrived in Singapore, the only way to find a unit, an apartment, was through the newspaper.
Yeah.
And so you had to go through the classic, because it was not online, trust me, buy the newspaper, go online, call, and go and visit each and every apartment to have a look at how it looked like, because there were seldom pictures in it, right? It looked like, Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
But it was actually 18 years ago, until Property Guru arrived, which was back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, and it was crazy for them that it was still like that in Singapore, because everything was already online all over the world.
Yeah.
Right? And why did they come up with this? Because they were suffering like we were in finding apartments in an easy way, especially because the market was very tight back then. And if you think of Uber, it's the same.
Yes.
Remember how it was crazy to book a taxi back then, and it was raining, you had to dial this, wait for hours and hours, and you had no taxi coming over, nothing. And where having everything at the tip of your smartphone basically was it was coming from an initial need, right?
Yes.
So it often starts like that, actually.
In fact, I can testify to the pain of the getting a taxi. It's really bad, The situation is, I think, atrocious, right? Until someone decides to address the pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, often to answer your question, business comes from, but what if I do it myself? At the end of the day, it often happens like that, if you think of it.
Sure. So I think an important point here is really finding a problem that you can relate to and taking the initiative to address it, right? So coming back to which, the next question is, why do you decide to name your previous company LMB Housing Services?
Oh, there's a code behind it. It's a French code, actually, because I'm from France. And so it stands for La Maison Bleue, which means the blue house. And why the blue house? Because it's a song, actually, in French, a very famous song that basically tells the story of it's a house in the province where the people are actually coming all together, laughing, eating, spending holidays. So it's basically a symbol of good time, basically, for French people. When you mention, it's like a Maison Bleue, it means like, it's a very cool place.
Wow, nice. Do you know how to sing it?
C'est une maison bleue. Yeah. I'm not a very good singer.
Okay. So for this business itself, for LMB Housing Services, do you bootstrap it or you fundraise it?
No. It's fully self-funded, completely self-funded. When I think of it, actually, it's quite scary.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Completely self-funded. As a matter of fact, when we left France, we decided to give it a try in Singapore. And so we had sold our own house. We basically sold everything we had in France and moved in Singapore. And so we had these savings that were sitting on an account that was basically that we used to first sign the first tenancies agreement in the various apartments, and basically to live for the first 18 months, because during the first 18 months, basically, there was no real income. I mean, there was income, but it was basically meant to cover for first the charges and grow the business pretty quickly, because we took up the first apartment in October 2006, sorry, and by January we already had 17 units. So we had to basically sign the 17 tenancy agreement, each time cash out 3 months of rental.
Yes.
Set up, the deposit for the utility, buy all the furnitures, do all these things, which represent a significant amount. But the market was really good. It was really picking up very well. So the units were sold. I mean, were booked immediately. So it was a profitable business from day one. But you needed a certain volume to make it to have a positive cash flow. Actually, the thing is, all the money that was coming in was reinvested to grow the business.
You really need to recycle the capital, right?
Immediately, yeah.
Wow.
So all the money was coming in was not used for us to live at all. It was 100% reinjected in the growth.
Yes.
And we were living on our savings.
Wow. I mean, what gave you the courage to take everything and
because the thing is, it was never, to be honest, it was not in those terms. The thing is, when I started this business, I found it was a very good idea because there was a need, but my thought was, let's take up to 5 units, run that as a side business.
Sure.
And I look for a real job with Microsoft, SAP, Oracle. I was coming from Microsoft. I was having a good job, good salary, good position, nice visit card and everything. And and take a real job, not this job of renting out apartments. But, I was not in a position like I put all my savings, I give everything up. But it picked up. We had big inquiries, especially from INSEAD students back then, because this is how we arrived in Singapore. And then the INSEAD school were asking for support to basically operate the apartments for their teachers, their professors. So basically we started, and before you know it, basically it was occupying me full time, as I said, in 4 months, up to 17 units, and it grew very fast like this. Hire the salespeople, hire the admin people, hire the technician, find the house. I mean, it grew. So I was never thinking I put all my savings onto the table and I pay and I play all that. No, it was let's give it a try, a side job, and which basically become extremely prominent suddenly.
So at which point do you quit your full-time job to focus
when I arrived in Singapore, I had no full-time job.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right to say that when I left Microsoft in France, I was actually on maternity leave, because when I arrived in Singapore, my third child was 3 months.
Okay.
So in France, you're given the possibility to have up to, for the third child, up to 1 year. It's unpaid. So the first 6 months are paid, but then it's unpaid. But the employer is meant to take you back when you come back.
Sure.
At the same role or equivalent and salary. So during these 6 months where I was in Singapore, first 6 months and then another 6 months, I always had the possibility to go back to my previous position. And to be very honest, I really thought of it. And at one point of time, I was thinking, okay, what do I do? Do I really give everything and stay here, make my life here? Or shall I, consider going back in Europe and going back to a different life?
Sure. So
I decided to stay here and to continue this business.
Nice. So it was a very calculated risk approach.
Yes.
And you can juggle between handling your young kids, your 2 other kids.
It was very difficult, it was very difficult. But in Singapore, it's a lot easier than anywhere else because you've got helpers, which you don't have in Europe.
Yeah.
So it was, I was very, very happy because I had a very fantastic helper who took good care of my children.
Great. Yeah, I think having the right support is very important.
Yeah.
So wow, so you had the conviction, the courage to test things out, to put the money in, and things work out, and you double down on that.
Yes, exactly.
Nice, and you're an incredible salesperson. You.
I mean, my strength was the sales part as well as the operation.
Sure.
My partner was taking care of the finance part and the tech part.
Got it. Yeah. So back to which. So throughout the whole journey for LMB housing, you fundraise it all the way.
Yes.
Wow.
And I would say, with hindsight, I would say, don't do that. We were approached by investors at least a couple of times. And originally that was not the plan. The plan was to raise funds. That was basically one of the reasons why setting up a business in Singapore. That was for many reasons. The original plan was that, and that was supposed to be part of my partner's role. Because he had been trained for that at INSEAD and he had the network for it through INSEAD and so on. The mistake is not to have done it. And not to have, when investors approached us, because we were approached by investors, it's a good business, looks good, and what do you think? What are your vision and so on? So we presented the vision, and instead of pushing, the discussion further, and exploring further seriously, when they put some numbers onto the table, I think we have been greedy or unrealistic in what they were asking, and we declined. With insights, don't do that. Take the money whilst it's possible. Now the question is, what are the terms? Probably look at it in a sense that get money when you don't need it.
Yeah.
Because then you have the choice of your investors.
True.
And with that choice, it means that you can actually do what you really want to do in terms of fully expanding up to the potential of the company. Because one regret I have is because we did not take investors. We were always running onto our own funds, meaning it was a limited amount of money by design, by essence. And furthermore, we don't want necessarily to basically burn everything at one point of time. You see 10 years or 8 years, so you have 3 children that are going to school. I mean, at one point of time, you want to put some money into your pocket, onto your saving account as well.
Yes.
Rather than constantly reinvesting and gambling all the time.
Yes.
So this is when having investors would have helped, because then it would have been a third-party money to basically grow at the pace that was needed. Because in some businesses, so it depends, not all the businesses are like that, but this business is very much a matter of volume. If you look at, and typically the company who bought over my company, Hamlet, raised a lot of money, $40 million, if I'm not mistaken, to basically expand very quickly. And all these companies, think of Airbnb typically, think of WeWork, and all these companies that were on a similar kind of business model, they raised a lot of money. Why? To expand immediately, because this is what makes your strengths. The volume, the network, this is what basically creates the real value of the business more than anything else. You see. If you don't do that, then you remain a small business doing a small business in a small country.
Makes sense.
To make a long story short, yes, I'm not recommending to look for funds straight away. No, but the moment you have a significant traction, that you are mastering your operation, that you're really bringing something onto the table, yes, definitely approach investors, because you are interesting into their eyes, because you're a cash cow, basically. You're a cash cow, you're profitable, you're generating money and so on, so that they're sure that the money they put onto the table will generate more. You see, it's no longer super risky for them.
Got it.
And for you, it is basically the key to really make a leapfrog to the next stage.
Definitely. You need money to make money, right?
Yes.
So based on your experience itself, for any young entrepreneurs who are bootstrapping their business all this while, and once they reach a certain milestone, what percentage of stake do you suggest that they can consider selling it to raise funds?
I would say it really depends on their ambition. It really depends on the ambition. I would say probably do not go beyond 20% at first. Unless to start with, I will say do not go beyond 20%, so that I don't see any reason to sell more to start with. First, because you want to keep, unless you want to disinvest completely, which is a different story.
Sure.
But if you still only need some funds to basically expand to the next stage, and you still want to remain in control of your business, selling 20% is also a good way to measure, to do that first without giving too much away, and while having an investor who is interested, right, but not overwhelming.
How about 10%?
10% is usually what some companies do in terms of, especially corporation.
Sure.
Corporation are taking small stakes, basically to have an eye on the strategy, on the patent, have a seat on the board, and these kind of things. It might not be very interesting for a startup to do that, because you get very little money. You have somebody who is, usually people who sell 10% of their business is because they're a bit desperate. They need cash
10%.
Desperately. Yeah.
Got it.
Of course, people do that because when you run a business, cash is the essence, right?
Yeah.
You need it, but it's not such a good idea. The only case where it could make sense is when your shareholder is a corporation, so it's a strategic investment for you and for them.
So the rule of thumb is 80% or somewhere around there.
Yeah, for a first investment, yes.
Got it. So, I understand that your prior employment experience before you transit to become an entrepreneur is from the sales side of things.
Yes.
Right? So you're a sales professional, and as a sales professional, I guess your skills is pretty specialized in that sense, right? Then when you transit to an entrepreneur, I guess there's like many different aspects that you are experiencing. So in your sense itself, what are the top 3 challenges that you encounter from your prior experience as a sales professional to becoming an entrepreneur?
Actually, yeah, you're right. As a salesperson, typically there is something that you usually not necessarily do, which is basically the delivery.
Sure.
I was in the tech industry, so as a salesperson, I was not doing the delivery.
Sure.
When you start a new business, you're basically in charge of everything.
Yes,
okay?
You're right.
Including the delivery.
Yes.
So you can sell the best thing on earth. At the end of the day, you have to deliver it.
Correct.
Where when you work for Microsoft, you sell a wonderful ERP system. You're not the one implementing it.
Okay.
You're not even the one coding it. You're not the one patching it.
Correct.
Right? When you sell housing, in my case, I was the one to look for the apartment, to set up the apartment, so the location, setting it up, making sure that the check-in were done, that the housekeeping was done, the maintenance was done, that the invoices were sent, that the money was coming in, that the people were hired. You're basically very much into the operation, you see.
Yeah.
In your business, so you're launching this business brokerage, and you're doing a lot of things that are not related directly to business brokerage.
Correct.
Because as an entrepreneur, you have to, because if you don't do it, it will not be done.
Yeah.
Simply, right? So this is the main challenge, is to realize that basically, well, nothing happens on its own. You have to do it. You have to do it. Or you have to find people to do it, meaning you have to make money to find people to do it.
Yes, which can be a challenge for a new startup, right?
It's a challenge because well, people are not so excited in working in a small company that is just starting. Furthermore, a startup is always very messy.
Yes.
A lot of people are very uncomfortable with what we call ambiguity nowadays. It's another nice word to say, very messy, to be frank. But
yes, you're right.
Yeah. And the essence of a startup is that it's messy. Basically, you do everything. You run like a chicken, headless chicken sometimes. And what is important is to know where you're going, okay, and keep in mind what is important to your client, not to you, but to your client. And many companies who've been copycat to my company, LMB Housing Services, back then, actually they failed. They failed because they were very poor in operations, because they were saying, oh, it's a good business, huh? Very easy, huh? You do this, money in my pocket, go. And they failed miserably, most of them, because they had never realized the amount of operations that is required. And even the company who bought us over, they bought us, they were raising funds, and their investors said, you suck at operation. So if you want my $40 million, you have to be good in operation.
Okay.
And you have to do it quickly. And the best way to do it quickly is to buy the competency. How do you do that? You can acquire a company that is good at that.
Yeah,
and this is where we arrived, because we were super good at that.
So one question here, right? How do you actually gain the operational execution skill?
Suffering. The truth is suffering. Honestly.
So
it's really suffering, but suffering in the sense that you realize all the things that have to be done only when they're in your face, basically. And sometimes you learn it the hard way through clients' feedback who are very that are blowing to your face, literally. So this is one learning. Then the other important thing is, how do you turn this into a system?
That's right.
Okay, how do you make sure? So first, learn out of this and turn that into a system so that this thing is anticipated. And I would say that, one thing that has been extremely important for us, it's my partner who developed this system, which was basically the system to automate as much as possible, as many operations as possible, so that basically it can be very smooth and very efficient, despite a high turnover. Second, the big challenge is, how do you make sure that the people on the ground, the people who are actually delivering the service, physically delivering the service, actually follows the system?
Yes.
So the training, the constant control loop. But here I'm talking about a business which is highly operation driven.
Yes.
But I don't know if you ever heard the interview of the founder of Ninja Van.
No.
It's fantastic. Listen to that guy. It's absolutely fantastic. Where basically he struggled with all these things, where it's highly operational, super optimized, and so on. The founder of Beam or Any Wheel, the bicycle and everything, super operational as well. You have to fabricate, you have to deliver, you have to maintain, you have to know where it is. Very operational. And basically, each time the people are fixing things on the ground, they must have the information, they must have a system. You don't want to run all your life after the people, right?
Correct.
You want to be able to control not the people, but that the things are done, properly done, that your KPIs are met, that the products are in good state where they are, that the service is rendered to the client, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So all that goes through a system. So you have to systemize, I don't know if it's an English word, but really take the time to sit down and go to the root cause of the problem. Why is that we have to send people in the middle of the night to fix this and fix that?
Yeah.
So my people don't want to work for me anymore because they don't want to run in the middle of the night. Neither do I. How do you make sure it does not happen? What are these problems that are occurring? Oh, it's because the battery ran off. Or it's because this. Simple, you change the battery every 6 weeks or every 2 months. Oh, but maybe they're still working. I don't care. Do you want to go and change the battery yourself at 2 a.m.? No. So you change it before it happens. Simple. And anticipate this kind. We know nowadays everybody talks about predictive maintenance. A lot of this is preventive.
Yeah.
Start with preventive and do it. You see, and systemize, execute, check that it's done, and reward when it's done, and take action when it's not.
So find out the root cause, streamline the modus operandi, and
automate it through systems.
Yeah.
This is where tech is crucial.
Yes.
Automate it through, especially nowadays, you can basically develop very, very efficient workflows with efficient control loop. So do it. Don't rely only on your brain and so on. Use those systems to automate, because at least you've got a baseline.
Yes.
Right? So that whenever you have new people onboarding, it's a lot easier as well. And if some people wish to move away, basically you're not completely in their hands.
Wow. I mean, how do you, because given the kind of work scope, I suppose turnover rate would be high, right?
Originally it was. During the first years it was a very high turnover, and we made 2 very critical hiring that really changed the course of this. One was our housekeeper director, because we had a huge turnover on the housekeeping staff, and the other one was the head of operations. These 2 persons were both coming from the hotel industry.
Okay.
So big hotels, I mean high-class hotels. So they knew exactly how things were running. They knew how to deal with fleet of people, of equipment, with customer satisfaction, and that made a whole difference, because these persons were extremely good in SOPs. Because they were far better than I would ever be, because they were coming from there. I learned by doing, so I was constantly missing things. They were not. And second, they knew how it works in a hotel and how you talk to housekeepers, technicians, and so on. They know how to manage these people. They know how to motivate them, how to reward them, how to hire them. They understand their challenge, their daily challenge, and how to create a good team building. And with them, they hired fantastic resource, and they knew how to manage them, and things was running well.
So having the right talent,
finding the right, it's super important. At one point of time, it's really important to find the experts in some arenas, and experts means that they know the industry, they know the SOPs, and they know the people. It's not only the tech,
yes,
it's most importantly the people as well, and the way it works, the processes of this environment.
Got it, yeah. So back to yourself, what were the issues that give you the most sleepless night?
There were plenty at So there were, the most sleepless night were basically at one point of time, so it's not directly related to this industry, but typically at one point of time, Singapore issued a guideline, because it became a regulation very late. It became a regulation back in 2017, but in 2010 they issued a guideline whereby typically the rule, no, it was not a rule, it was a guideline that was the perfectly gray area, which was make me very sleepless, whereby we were not supposed to do what they call short-term accommodation or short-term rental in residential housing. Typically what we were doing was usually 3 months, 6 months rental. We were not doing weekly nor daily nor anything like that. It was usually we were catering to professionals, professors, consultants. So typically people comes on a mission for a few months, right? Nevertheless, it was extremely grey. It was a guideline, not a regulation. There've been a lot of discussion with all the authorities ongoing for years, literally ongoing for years. I was going there every quarter. It was, there were quite a number of challenging situations there. Another situation that was very tough was typically as a salesperson, I was taking bet. So typically when a client was coming saying, I need 15 units for this long time, even though I had only 5 in hand, I was saying, okay. Okay, I have basically 1 month to find 10 units, to set them up. And the market was super tight. The rentals were going shooting high, and I needed to buy reasonably because you don't want to load your business with dead horse, right?
Yes.
You want to have, because if your client is signing for 6 months, you're carrying the tenancy agreement for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't want to load the company badly. So so typically sleepless night, like going through all the websites, calling the agent, visiting the things, negotiating like mad until the end, and and setting up physically, literally at the beginning of the business, I was personally with my team going, buying the furnitures, pushing the furnitures, putting the furnitures into taxis and unloading, setting up apartments. So typically we were all setting up apartments simultaneously. So I was taking a unit and setting up the whole apartment in 1 day. So of course the guys from IKEA were coming and doing the mounting, but doing all the other things all together, so that basically we were able to do that. That was pretty sleepless because when the clients were arriving, we were, are you ready? Are you almost? The cleaning is done. There, almost. Hurry! The client is on the way. That was quite challenging. And same. I mean, other things is when you have to renew a big batch of apartment, because I took a lot of apartment the first years. Means that 2 years down the road you have to renew all that.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the rentals have increased like mad.
Yeah.
But you sold at that price to the client.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh dear.
So you have to negotiate like crazy and be prepared to say, no, sorry, Mr. Landlord, I'm not signing up again. So it was, the negotiation part was really, so a lot of, typically all these things. At one point we had a funny story, which was really unpleasant, which was, we had repeated thefts in the apartment. So obviously there was one of our personnel who was a robber, no other word to say. But who? Yeah. On a team of 40, who is the person stealing in the client's belonging? Correct. How do you? So we involved the police. So the staff was feeling very uncomfortable. Why you accuse me? No, I'm not accusing you. The clients were very jumpy. So that was another story. There are plenty of stories like that makes your life very sleepless.
Wow, I can imagine it.